Prison break at the beginning of the movie is a really important scene for a number of reasons. One is that it sets up the threat of our big villain, Boris the Animal.
Well, well, Boris the Animal has a visitor.
You know, when you open up into it, you don't know where you are except that you're in some sort of prison. And so as the sequence builds, it kind of becomes bigger and bigger. You realize these are really long hallways and there's more room to make this thing feel gigantic.
The set piece that they built was 2 sections tall, but needed to be 6. So we had to do a lot of set extensions work. And then also for the length of it, really only went just a couple cells, so we would have to extend that digitally as well.
My character in the movie is coming to help Boris escape, and I do that bringing in a cake. Just an innocent little homemade baked cake.
Would you mind cutting this out for us? It's a special day.
We got to make it out of a springed silicone unit that was then glazed with real cake frosting and decorated, so it sort of jiggled a little bit.
Oh, I wouldn't do that.
Why is that?
It'll ruin your figure.
Hidden inside the cake is this alien. It's called the Weasel.
What was fun about that sequence is it's such a bizarre creature and what it's doing. Spencer Cook, our animation director, had a lot of fun with how we designed that creature and what we were doing with it. And there's a series of shots through the movie where it's played in a bizarre way, a little bit for laughs. Like when he rubs almost like a cat on Boris's face.
Even down to the detail of the little highlight in the weasel's eye, just to give him a little personality. I mean, there's a moment where Spencer kind of animated the weasel looking right up and making contact with Boris.
It's thinking about what it's doing, but it's looking to him for approval. I don't know like how it fits into his biology, and who knows what it is, but it's a cool creature.
Rick Baker designed the weasel. He actually delivered a digital file for the digital guys to build their character from. We also had a practical one, that we had on set, so that would help those match up.
The lunar prison was really fun for us, too, because we got to design and make all the weapons. So we made assault rifles and submachine guns and handguns. There's really a lot of eye candy in this movie.
I'm so excited because earlier I got to see my rocket launcher. I've been waiting to hold that thing for weeks. It's pretty intense. It all starts out with Betty Crocker, then cut to me with the rocket launcher.
The other aspect of the prison break sequence, which was a fun challenge and allowed us in animation to use some different tools, was the scene when Boris shoots the hole in the wall. And the original idea for that was to do it with stunts, but it just didn't look right. So what we started thinking about was we could animate all these guys. And so we sort of sculpted the forces to have them fall through that hole.
They put me on this harness, and they have to rappel me backwards at like 50 miles an hour. Go! I'll wait for you! Doing all my own stunts. But I think they do have a stunt girl to do like the extra intense stuff.
The other big aspect of that sequence was Boris escaping. It's one long shot. The real actor, Jermaine Clement, he becomes a digital character, and it's on the moon, low gravity, so it's much more floaty and much more smooth, which is what we try to avoid in digital animation. We don't want it floaty and smooth.
Let's rewrite history, shall we, Kay?
The problem is on the stage in New York, they could only pull the camera back like 30 feet or so. The camera move in the actual shot, though, travels from the moon surface until we hit the planet Earth. So we had to take Jermaine, kind of come up with the digital equivalent in the computer of his representation, exactly what the physical camera had done, and then extend that off digitally.
It's really a cool, exciting, but very Men in Black way to start the movie. Barry has very unique beginnings to his films, and this is definitely one of them.
The scene in Wu's Diamond Garden is the first big action scene for Agent J and Agent K. And it's really kind of a welcome back to the franchise.
Oh, Kay, Jay, so happy to see you.
Wu's restaurant is filled with a lot of different effects, a lot of practical stuff that the guys did and mixed with what we're doing. And it actually turned out pretty fun.
What's in that slime, actually?
KY jelly mixed with water.
On this one, the idea was that all the aliens would come from Rick and Cinovation, even if they're going to be digital characters, that he would be involved with the design just for a consistency in the overall look.
Hey!
We did
some aliens specifically for that scene, and we also have the Spiky Balba, which is this little animatronic character that we did that is one of Boris's favorite foods.
There's a beautiful sculpt and all this detailed paintwork, but you need to have it feel more alive and actually give it a personality. So we had a company do some blinks and move the stalks around a little bit and add little eye glances and breathing.
Foodstuffs.
Tommy's character finds the Spiky Balba and proceeds to beat Mr. Wu savagely with it.
Who's the Spiky Balba for, Wu? All right, you slug.
Whoa, whoa! The audio track on it with little squeaks and whines gives it a whole other personality.
Also, Wu is revealed as an alien for just one shot, like he's a slug of some sort. That was all CG. Basically, we had the actor standing there with these blue leotards on.
Okay, come on, I got larvae to feed.
We had a number of other aliens that we called pass aliens. They used a couple of UFC fighters that we did alien makeups on in some shots. And there was one very elaborate one that we called Dread that you see for a split second. We always knew that they were going to just be a glimpse of this guy. As soon as you see him, he gets shot, basically.
When we get into the gun battle between Agent J and K and the aliens, we had to come up with a look for each alien to have a slightly different color of splatter. You wanted to feel like it came from the real world, also felt a little bit like the first Men in Black films, but also now it's like, well, let's do something a little different this time.
Fish is going to eat you, and it's coming up your legs. You grab, and we'll rehearse all this.
The giant fish in the tank, it's such a big creature that when it comes flying out of the door, there was no way to do much practical there.
All of the design and execution happened in the post process. You got to figure out, well, how does this fish look, you know? And how does it look appropriate in the environment in which it's going to be seen in? I had to make sure that the color palette and skin characteristics looked good in that environment. So that required multiple iterations as well.
And then we had the guys on cables, and trying to make all of that even believable was not easy in any way.
And 3, 2, 1, go!
This is a very early test of like how stuff sprays off the fish, kind of how it hits the floor, and how slime would work. And then kind of refining that a little farther. CG doors, CG furniture, fish is obviously CG. Final composite, you know, getting all those pieces together. All the plates kind of put together to make a single plate.
Especially in a visual effects movie like this.
And now!
Where we're incorporating creatures into a real environment. No matter how fantastic the creature, we want to find something in the real world that is a kind of counterpart, something that we can get ideas from in terms of how a creature that big and that heavy could move, and incorporate that into the animation.
For some of the shots where Will does actually physically interact a little bit closer with the fish, when it came back here, it was a lot of paint work for us to kind of make sure that, you know, our digital character and Will Smith all integrated together.
Just a constant mix of types of techniques to make the whole scene work.
The time jump sequence was always going to be one of the most challenging sequences in the movie.
We did a combination of just about everything you could imagine.
This was the weirdest sequence I'd ever worked on.
Now, take these, because it gets pretty windy on the way down.
The way down.
And when you sort of read the script and you just have this little description, it's like, you know, Will activates time device, jumps off the Chrysler building, next thing you know, he's in 1969. You're like, all right, well, you know, exactly what are the breakdown aspects of that?
Gosh, it was one of the earliest sequences planned out in the movie, and it was some early pre-visualization was done, which is kind of early models and early animation tests.
And then during production, the only thing that really existed was one of the gargoyles on the corner of the Chrysler building that Will is walking on.
Basically, we had one gargoyle head, a little piece of some of the back wall of the Chrysler building, but that really was it. It was a big blue screen stage. And everything else, the Chrysler building, all of New York, or our version of New York, is all manufactured by us.
And it's one of those things where, you know, we start off with reality, we'll build the Chrysler exactly as is, but then we have to alter it to either work with the set piece or it might be for the storytelling purposes.
The Chrysler Building is really, I think, 80-odd stories in real life. In the sequence, it goes anywhere from 80 stories to 300, maybe 400 stories to, again, to fit the narrative, to fit the needs of the sequence, because I think if you really jumped off of it, it would take just a few seconds to get to the bottom, and that's maybe not very satisfying as a roller coaster ride in the movie.
Now, as soon as you're moving fast enough, that circle's gonna fill up with some sort of green time travel liquid or some such, and it's gonna glow really bright.
We really wanted to feel that the clock is ticking, and he's got to achieve a certain number of steps with the time device to actually go back in time, and he's got to do that before he hits the ground. So one of the cool shots that I'm most proud of is this shot where he loses the time device. It gets knocked out of his hand, and he's tumbling around.
That's just an all-digital will. There was no other way to do it, to get him to start to peel out and go down the side of the Chrysler Building.
As the camera goes past him, we see his face, and he's reaching for this device. Everything from his chin down is a digital character. But his face is Will's real face, because Barry shot him against a blue screen from about the chest up, acting like he's reaching and getting all this expression on his face. And then we use that to put onto our digital character for just that portion of the shot.
But there's also where we replace a hand holding a time device. The time device is CG. Parts of Will are CG, and some of it's real. It's constant mix. The time device finally clicks in and works. This, whatever it is, this green thing comes in and wipes across, and you're suddenly in different time zones, and you're going through time.
What I wrote for that scene was that Agent J would travel back into time and see every type of person, every type of creature who has ever lived on the island of Manhattan. So we get to not only see the dinosaurs, but we also travel through a fun montage of history.
We have the Wall Street crash briefly, and Barry Sonnenfeld is the main guy who's falling in that scene. That was pretty funny. And it's just nuts. I mean, the whole sequence is nuts, which is actually what's so cool about it.
I think it also lends kind of a historic scope to the movie that we're telling, which is also a story about saving the Earth again. It's a secret history that the world may never know about, but that the Men in Black do.
And action.
The monobike is a specialty prop.
That's fantastic.
They're great toys. They go fast, they handle really well, and it's like being a kid again on that stuff.
MiB!
MiB!
Yeah!
I treat these kinds of vehicles like characters, especially in a movie like this. It's a roller coaster we're making, and you gotta break rules constantly to make it work.
We gotta stop this guy! I've been trying. You haven't been trying?
Oh dear. I forgot to see this one coming.
There's a moment where Boris jumps with his alien motorcycle out of Shea Stadium, lands on their car gets damaged, bursts into flames. So this is when they dispense the monobikes.
You have these in the future? No. Get on.
The car was actually a practical thing that lifted it up, but we really had to tweak it a lot. We had to paint out a lot of cables, as usual. And then the device that lowers the bikes out was all CG and digital that we put in. They get on these things, and then we're off on this motorcycle chase.
Keep driver settings to 0 gain. Balance pitching y'all with short bursts on the center stalk between 80 and 100 PSI.
Yeah, I didn't understand any of that.
The idea behind the motorcycle chase was to not just give us a cool, kind of Men in Black take on a car chase, but also to give it that Men in Black spin, which was some different technology.
They've got these really fancy, somehow super high-tech motorcycle vehicles back in 1969. These are all, super high chrome and look very high-tech, sort of like your typical Men in Black type of equipment that you might get.
And of course, there is no such thing as a motorcycle. It just isn't really a drivable piece of equipment. So here we have these, things that don't even exist and aren't drivable and have to do a chase sequence in 1969 through the streets of New York at night. How do you do that?
Right there, Chief. Hell yeah. Be better with 4 wheels. 2 is like my minimum.
What we did is we set out to make the real thing. We made a real tire, real looking engine, seats. Actors can mount it. We can put it on a track and run it in and out of frame as though it's taking off.
Try to pull them out a little faster, guys.
And then they also built a version. It was on like a go-kart because obviously you can't really ride a motorcycle that effectively.
They're go-karts with Porsche engines, so they'll actually go very, very fast.
There will always be a CG element to it in that making the wheel move and when it has to careen down the street. But ultimately, the visual effects department will lay in the tire and erase the go-kart.
There was a huge amount of blue and green screen work with the actors just sitting on the stage on a thing that would move and they were pretending to ride.
That's cut.
The fun thing about that was that Agent J and Agent K both have a different amount of experience on the motorcycles. You know, this is in 1969. This is, you know, Agent K's world. So he knows how to ride these things. Agent J has never seen these before. So we took that into account in the animation, and a huge portion of that sequence is animated.
A lot of that is all CG. Even the stunts and the actors are all CG, racing around each other. And we're going down a CG street with CG cars and CG guys spinning around. It's just a constant mix of types of techniques to make the whole scene work.
You gotta remember, this is new to me. You know that's just a blue screen, right? Yeah.
One of the great joys in the life of a writer is to see what you've written actually come to life and get made. And the motorcycles was no exception.
Everybody's going to want motorcycles after this chase.